Snowman's surprise. Timmy patted the snowman's colossal belly, a sphere so wide he'd had to roll it with a rope and pulley system pilfered from his dad's garage. It was the biggest snowman the street had ever seen, topping even Mr. Abernathy's disastrous attempt from '08 that had collapsed under its own weight. He stepped back, admiring his handiwork. Two charcoal eyes stared back, a carrot nose pointed jauntily skyward, and a goofy grin stretched across its face, courtesy of some strategically placed river stones. A shrill voice cut through the crisp winter air. "Arthur Peterson! This is simply unacceptable." Timmy peeked around the snowman. Mrs. Crabtree, HOA president and neighborhood terror, stood on Mr. Peterson's unshoveled walkway, hands planted firmly on her hips. Mr. Peterson, his face flushed red against the snow, leaned on his shovel, looking defeated. "Agnes, I told you I'll get to it," he mumbled, his breath puffing out in white clouds. "My back's been acting up something fierce." "Excuses, Arthur. Excuses. The HOA bylaws are quite clear. Sidewalks must be cleared within 24 hours of snowfall. You're setting a bad example for the entire community. What if someone slips and falls? Do you want a lawsuit on your hands?" Her voice rose with each word, attracting the attention of Mrs. Henderson across the street, who subtly adjusted her curtains. Mr. Peterson straightened, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. "I fought for this country, Agnes. I think I've earned the right to shovel my sidewalk when my aching back allows." "That's hardly relevant, Arthur. This is about maintaining property values and upholding community standards." Mrs. Crabtree's voice dripped with disdain. Timmy felt a surge of anger. It wasn't fair. Mr. Peterson was the kindest man on the block, always ready with a smile and a helping hand. The pink peril. Mrs. Crabtree's face contorted. A roadmap of fury etched into her wrinkles. "You think you can defy me, Peterson? Defy the HOA?" She reached into the depths of her oversized handbag, emerging with a bright pink water pistol. It looked like a child's toy, but the glint in her eye was anything but playful. "This," she declared, brandishing the weapon, "is a snowmelting solution, specially formulated, guaranteed to clear any icy patch. And I won't hesitate to use it." Arthur Peterson stood firm, his shovel planted in the snow like a defiant flag. "You wouldn't." "Oh, wouldn't I?" Mrs. Crabtree took a step closer, the pink plastic gleaming ominously in the winter sun. "This isn't a game, Peterson. You signed the HOA agreement. You will abide by the regulations." Timmy Johnson, who had been edging closer, his senses on high alert, noticed a faint, sickly sweet smell wafting from the pistol. It wasn't chemicals, it was fruit punch. He cautiously sniffed the air again. "Kool-Aid?" he blurted out, the realization dawning on him. "That's just pink Kool-Aid. A button to call Mom." The sickly sweet smell finally registered. It wasn't gasoline. It was Kool-Aid? The water pistol, now sticky in Timmy's grip, was filled with sugary red liquid. Karen's methods were bizarre, illogical, but definitely unsettling. His mind raced. He needed help. Real help. Then, a memory flickered. Mom, kneeling beside him, explaining the tiny button on his dinosaur-shaped walkie-talkie. "This," she'd said, her voice serious, "is a button to call Mom. Only for emergencies, okay, Timmy? If you're ever really, really scared, push this." He hadn't seen the walkie-talkie in years. It was probably buried in a box in the attic. But the memory sparked an idea. He patted his pockets, a surge of hope jolting through him. There. His key fob. Mom had programmed a similar function into it, a silent alarm disguised as a car lock button. Heart hammering, Timmy waited until Karen was distracted, ranting at Mr. Henderson about his unsightly garden gnomes. He slipped the fob from his pocket, his thumb hovering over the lock button. He pressed it, a silent plea sent into the digital ether. Then he leaned close to the small speaker on the fob. Whispering as quietly as he could, he said, "Mom, it's me. I'm really, really scared. Henderson's house. Help. Agent Johnson on the case." The shrill ring of her burner phone shattered the Homeland Security Office's low thrum, a sound Sarah Johnson dreaded. Her stomach clenched. Only dire straits prompted Timmy to use that line. "Give me the situation," she snapped, already heading for the reinforced exit. "Mom, things are strange." Timmy's voice, distorted by static, held a note of panic that iced her marrow. "Mrs. Crabtree, you know, next door?" She forced Mr. Henderson to shovel snow with a gun. A toy one, but still. And it reeked of cherry drink mix when he collapsed. "Drink mix?" Sarah's brow furrowed, filing away the odd detail. "Location?" He recited the address. A glacial dread seeped into Sarah's bones. 14, Nightingale Lane. A place she knew intimately. Not just a random house in suburbia with neighborhood disputes, but a dormant relay point. For Project Nightingale. A ghost she thought laid to rest long ago. Timmy, barricade yourself in, secure all entries, and ignore any callers. I'm coming. The phone hit its cradle with a decisive thud, adrenaline surging. This was leagues beyond squabbles over property lines. This was something altogether different. Something perilous. She retrieved her Sig Sauer from its berth, the firearm's chill a stark reassurance. Whatever game Mrs. Crabtree was playing, the curtain was about to fall. Immediately. Cherry snowfall. The siren was a muffled scream through the Explorer's thick windows, a desperate plea against the backdrop of suburban tranquility. Johnson gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, willing the SUV to move faster. The call had been garbled, frantic, something about Mrs. Crabtree, Kool-Aid, and Peterson? It made no sense, but the dispatcher's voice had been laced with a tremor that cut through the bureaucratic monotone. She screeched to a halt in front of Peterson's house, the Explorer nearly mounting the curb. The sight that greeted her was pure absurdity. Agnes Crabtree, resplendent in a fuchsia snowsuit that screamed country club chic, was wielding a super soaker like a weapon of mass hydration. Arthur Peterson, shovel-clutched defensively, stood his ground on the sidewalk, a crimson tide rapidly engulfing his face. You will clear the sidewalk, Peterson. Crabtree shrieked, squeezing the trigger again. A concentrated jet of cherry Kool-Aid arced through the air. It splattered across Peterson's face, the saccharine scent cloying in the frigid air. He sputtered, blinking, a red mask forming on his weathered skin. His eyes, usually twinkling with mischief, were now narrowed with a stubborn defiance. He raised the shovel higher, a silent declaration of war against the fuchsia menace. Johnson knew with a sickening certainty that this ridiculous scene was about to escalate. Timmy's stand. The air hung thick with the sickly sweet scent of cherry Kool-Aid. Arthur Peterson, usually so spry, leaned heavily on his shovel, cherry-red rivulets dripping from his thinning hair. Agnes Crabtree, resembling a demented clown with her ruby-stained cheeks, advanced, super soaker held high. Timmy peered from behind the melting snowman. He'd seen enough. It wasn't water. It was Kool-Aid, the cheap kind his mom bought when they were short on cash. The realization sparked a fury in his chest. This wasn't just petty, it was mean. He burst from his hiding place, boots crunching on the packed snow. Mrs. Crabtree. Stop it. Agnes Crabtree whirled around, eyes wide with surprise. A dollop of cherry Kool-Aid splattered on her cheek from the sudden movement. Timmy Johnson, you go home. This is none of your concern. Her voice, usually a shrill whine, held a sharper edge laced with a surprising tremor. It is my concern. You're bullying Mr. Peterson. And that's not water, it's Kool-Aid. You're wasting it. Timmy pointed a mittened finger, his voice trembling but firm. The color drained from Mrs. Crabtree's face. The super soaker slipped from her grasp, landing with a soft thud in the snow, a small puddle of red blooming around it. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Badge of justice. The black SUV, government plates glinting under the afternoon sun, crunched to a halt on Mrs. Crabtree's meticulously manicured lawn. Agent Johnson emerged, tall and imposing in her Homeland Security uniform. The crisp fabric seemed to amplify the authority radiating from her. Agnes Crabtree stood frozen, the garishly colored super soaker clattering onto the pristine grass. Her mouth worked silently, a fish gasping for water. Arthur Peterson, leaning heavily on his shovel, was a Jackson Pollock painting of cherry Kool-Aid. He stared at Agent Johnson, bewildered, a crimson droplet tracing a path down his weathered cheek. Mrs. Crabtree, Agent Johnson's voice cut through the suburban tranquility, sharp and unwavering. We need to talk. She advanced, her polished boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. The use of a water gun, modified or otherwise, to intimidate or coerce a citizen into performing labor is a violation of multiple federal statutes. Do you understand? Mrs. Crabtree stammered, I just wanted him to clear the snow. It's a hazard. A hazard mitigated by a phone call to the HOA, not by brandishing what could reasonably be perceived as a weapon, Agent Johnson countered, her gaze unwavering. Mr. Peterson served this country. He deserves respect, not Kool-Aid-induced humiliation. This isn't a neighborhood squabble anymore, Mrs. Crabtree. This is a federal offense. She gestured to Arthur. Sir, are you injured? Neighbors unite. Agnes Crabtree stood frozen, Kool-Aid staining her perfectly pressed floral dress. Federal offenses, she stammered, her face a roadmap of conflicting emotions. Timmy Johnson, emboldened, pointed a finger. You can't just make up rules, Mrs. Crabtree. You're bullying Mr. Peterson. A murmur rippled through the small crowd that had gathered. Mrs. Higgins, from across the street, stepped forward, a plate of cookies in her hand. "Arthur, dear," she said, ignoring Mrs. Crabtree, "come inside and get cleaned up. I'll even throw that stained shirt in the wash for you." Mr. Peterson, still bewildered, allowed Mrs. Higgins to lead him away. Others followed, offering support. Old Mr. Abernathy patted him on the back. Maria Sanchez, a lawyer, offered her card. "If she gives you any more trouble, Arthur, you call me." Agent Johnson watched, her protective instincts easing slightly. The HOA board members, a trio of nervous-looking individuals, huddled together. Mr. Thompson, the board president, cleared his throat. "Agnes," he said, his voice trembling, "I think we need to reevaluate some of the community guidelines." The other two board members nodded vigorously. The scent of rebellion hung thick in the air, tinged with the sweet aroma of Mrs. Higgins' cookies. Cocoa and kindness. The snowdrifts shrank visibly as Mr. Peterson's neighbors, alerted by the commotion, joined him with their own shovels. He was still picking stray bits of cherry Kool-Aid powder from his beard, muttering about youthful exuberance and surprisingly effective projectiles, but he was shoveling nonetheless. The shared labor warmed him more than any coat could. Across the street, Mrs. Crabtree stood frozen, a crimson stain spreading across her pristine white parka. The air crackled with the unspoken accusations of the small crowd that had gathered. Officer Miller, looking grim, was speaking into his radio, his gaze never leaving her. Agnes imagined the whispers, the pointed fingers, the inevitable HOA meeting where her reign of terror would be officially dismantled. The Kool-Aid felt sticky and cold against her skin, a physical manifestation of her shame. Later, after the police had taken Mrs. Crabtree away and the last of the snow was cleared, Mr. Peterson beckoned Timmy over. "Come on inside, young man," he said, a genuine smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "I believe you've earned yourself some hot cocoa." Timmy, still buzzing with adrenaline, hesitated only a moment before following him into the cozy warmth of the house. The cocoa was rich and chocolatey, steam swirling around his face as he sipped it. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson," he mumbled, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the drink. "Thank you, Timmy," Mr. Peterson replied, clapping him on the shoulder, "for being braver than I was."